Happy New Year. I'm here with Marcus Lemonis, the executive chairman of Beyond Inc., parent company of BedBathAndBeyond.com, Overstock.com, Zulily.com, a host of services and a lot of big plans. We are speaking today, Marcus, because in December I wrote a column about 5 events that I thought were definitive for the home furnishings industry in 2024. One of those being what I characterized as the Beyond Inc. circus. You took umbrage with that characterization, and you're here to kind of set the record straight and explain to people what's really going on. So where do you want to start?
Well, first of all, I thought your editorial column was fact-based. I want to be clear about that. I thought not just about us, but I thought you as you normally do, and I'm not into paying compliments, but I'll give you one while we start. You do a nice job of cataloging the facts. And if you are an outsider looking in and you don't understand the context of things, I can totally see why people would categorize it that way. I took offense to it. That's even a stronger word, because I felt like the facts that supported some of the moves were more important than the moves themselves, and the context matters.
Okay.
And so I asked for this discussion so that everybody who's had the same questions and thought the same thing as you and has had a wonderful time poking and prodding and asking questions, as they should, are able to get more clear answers about how we got here.
Okay.
I think it's important, though, Jennifer, because I took my official capacity in February of 24. And the path to get to that was bumpy, and it was a public display. It was in the New York Post. It was in the Wall Street Journal. It was that may have been the circus, by the way. But I want to take everybody back. And for those people who are new to the story, Overstock was a public company for a lot longer than it has been Beyond. It was founded by a very intellectual gentleman by the name of Patrick Byrne, who had wild ideas, but really innovative and smart ideas. And candidly, she get credit for creating one of the first marketplaces in the home space and in the general e-commerce space overall. I remember the commercials where he would stand on the building and drop things off the building. Patrick is so smart that a simple e-commerce business where it's just selling goods like home goods, like electronics, jewelry, fashion, footwear, etc., it wasn't enough. And over the course of a decade, the company invested north of $300 million in businesses that had nothing to do with Overstock, ranging from crazy things like a window company, which, by the way, that's where the windows from headquarters came from, those rounded windows,
Okay.
all the way to founding T0 and really wanting to be a pioneer and an innovator around blockchain and cryptocurrency.
And this is the Medici business, as it's
It is. It's the Medici assets were all ultimately lumped into that. For the average person that you meet in the grocery store, including people that we know, blockchain, crypto, and a lot of these super technology ideas were foreign to people. And at the time, the subset of investors that flocked to Overstock weren't flocking singularly to Overstock because he thought it was the next Amazon. It was flocking to Overstock because it was fascinated by a public company giving them access to invest in blockchain and crypto and a variety of other innovative technologies. I think that, if truth be told, and I think you and I maybe even mentioned this once before, Patrick at one point even wanted to spin off the e-commerce business known as Overstock, didn't get the value that he had hoped for, so it just stayed in there. Rather than feeding that monster and allowing Overstock to grow, the capital went the other way, and it went towards these Medici assets and towards blockchain and building T0, all very phenomenal ideas, but it left the underpinning of the core business a little vulnerable, building its own technology stack that's singularly proprietary, building its own PIM as opposed to using an off-the-shelf one, and really forcing the company to build a labor model that supported a proprietary model. If you go with an off-the-shelf product, you're in good shape. At the same time that all of this was happening, if you look back over a 10-year history, Overstock, the e-commerce business, has done anywhere from $1.5 billion to call it 2 point something in revenue, with the bulk of the high point being during COVID. And if you pull COVID out, and I'll call COVID back half of 20, all of 21, front half of 22. If you pull that out, it sat in the range of 1.5.
Okay.
That's kind of where it's at. When COVID happened, Overstock wasn't the only player doing well in e-commerce. And other companies that had historically been brick and mortar invested a lot of capital in growing their own marketplaces, building their own businesses, i.e. Wayfair, phenomenal growth. Walmart developing its own marketplace, Target developing its own marketplace, Amazon entering in the space, Temu coming to the table, Shein coming to the table, all these new players.
Yeah.
And it, I think, ultimately created a confusing marketplace. After COVID, after things started to subside, Overstock's numbers started to slide. And people accepted that to a certain degree, because people were like, oh, well, it's not COVID anymore.
Right.
In the summer of 23, we all know the public execution that Bed Bath & Beyond was going through.
The longest Bed Bath & Beyond business. Yeah.
One of the darling brands that had ever been in retail in America, founded by what I would call pioneers and engineers of innovation around how to curate something for a homeowner, a college dweller, a new married couple, folks that had a baby. And we all know Bed Bath & Beyond, what it looked like. We all have our memories of our parents taking us there or us taking our kids there. That doesn't exist anymore today. In the summer of 2023, and this is my opinion, I had no facts to back it up. It is my opinion that the executive leadership at Overstock wanted to accomplish two things. It wanted to shed itself of the Patrick Byrne effect, which was all the crazy political conspiracy, SEC investigation, the list goes on and on, wanted to separate itself from that, felt that Overstock, the name itself, had a tarnish to it, because certain vendors would say, I'm not selling on Overstock. I don't want people thinking that my company is broken. And it was an open marketplace as opposed to a closed marketplace, which Zulily, it was a closed marketplace. In that process, the Bed Bath & Beyond intellectual property assets went through the bankruptcy process, and Overstock hired an investment banker to pursue the acquisition of it. And as everybody knows, in the summer of 2023, Overstock was the winning bidder, 22 point something million dollars, in buying that business. When you put 1 and 2 together, the two things I just told you, it's really what led to what I believe was the bullet, not the silver bullet. The previous executive leader was a lawyer, a fine lawyer at that. He was the general counsel for the company for years. Never run a retail store, never operated a website, was never a merchant, wasn't in love with product, didn't think about the customer experience the same way. Fine gentleman, but from a different background. And I think the combination of wanting to get away from Patrick and wanting to acquire Bed Bath as a potential competitor to Wayfair or competitor to whoever it may be had a thesis behind it. And the thesis for a neophyte was fine, which is I'm going to acquire a big database and I'm going to capture that database and convert that database. I'm going to have these email names. And the minute I email them, they're going to show up and everything's going to work out fine. Step number 1 was, how do you do that? And instead of getting a headless model, Commerce Tools, Commerce Cloud, Shopify, to stand up Bed Bath & Beyond as its own website, or in the bankruptcy process, actually buying the website because it was functioning, was dismissive and said, keep your website, keep your technology, I don't need it. And instead of having a dual path where Overstock would maintain itself at 1.5 billion, and yes, it would need to deal with whatever was out there in the general marketplace, and you would build Bed Bath. Instead, he made the decision to shut Overstock off, crush the business. Now, for the average consumer and the average, watcher of this video, shutting a website off and changing the name and opening it back up in the next morning isn't like closing the front door of your business and just putting up a new sign, because technology is driven by content and websites are driven by SKUs. And when you change the SKU dynamic and you change the architecture of the site, you change the domain authority of the site. And what I mean by domain authority is when you type in chair today, you're going to see a combination of paid ads and organic search. The organic search, when they shut off Overstock, was destroyed, wiped out. It was wiped out. And in its simplest form, when it opened up the next morning as Bed Bath, the historical Overstock customer came and went, what is this? Mm-hmm. And there was nowhere to go. It just took them to a Bed Bath page. They thought Overstock went out of business. When you take Bed Bath and you take it from what used to be hundreds of thousands of SKUs to 13 million SKUs, ranging from rugs, patio, water filters, and anything in between that would exist in an overall marketplace, anything that was on Overstock, you not only lost your Overstock customer because they came back and it was a different experience, but the Bed Bath historical customer who thought you just died a slow death in front of everybody, didn't know you came back. And then when they did come back to the website, they saw things that they had no idea what they were. When is Bed Bath & Beyond ever sold 6-piece patio sets? And when have they ever sold dining room tables? And when have they ever sold a big Safavia rugs? They didn't. So you had this misalignment. And that's really where I decided to jump in that moment. But I didn't have an appreciation for how much things were destroyed.
Now, okay, so they flipped the switch on August 1st, 2023. You came on the board as an independent director in October 2023. A few weeks later, they changed the entire corporate identity from Overstock.com to Beyond Inc. There was a lot of stuff going on, activist investors, blah, 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 blah.
Changed stock exchanges, changed ticker, changed everything.
Yes, changed everything. And you officially, as you noted, became executive chairman last February, and things have been running at a fast clip since then.
Yeah. And a tough one. Tariff.
A tough one.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard you lay out your vision for the model you're building, which is, I believe you described it as ultimately a fintech company with these constituent parts that feed up. It's about data and services. Could you describe what actually you're building this company into?
I can, but because I have so much respect for you, I want to make sure that we address all the points in your editorial first.
Okay. All right.
Because I want to be able to give you the answers that maybe I didn't before or somebody else didn't, because you're not the only person that asks those questions.
Okay. So do you want to?
Yeah.
Got it right here.
Yep.
All right. So what I said was you could fill a page with the doings at Beyond Inc. During 2024. And here are a few of the things that happened in the year. Company said it would bring on board a brand expert to revive the legacy Wamsutta brand, and then sold the brand to IndoCount. You want to take one at a time?
Let's address that one. Yeah.
Okay.
So I said that I would bring on somebody to revive Wamsutta because I believe in that brand, and Triton had taken it off the shelf for 3 years prior to Bed Bath's demise. For some reason, he did not see the value in the Wamsutta brand. I did. I had it as a kid. I had it as a college student. I had it as an adult. Every other consumer knew what it was. It was the #1 selling sheets brand in America because it was sold through Bed Bath & Beyond. And I felt that there was a revival there. And I had been in discussions with a lot of celebrities about reviving the brand. And as I started that process of thinking about how to have a face on it and how to have a brand expert around it, I also had to figure out who the vendor would be. And so I went and saw a number of vendors, and I narrowed it down to PEM America and IndoCount. And I happened to go to dinner with what I consider one of the smartest textile guys in the world, in Mohit, in sort of how he looks at textiles. And we were having
Mohit Jain, who's
Yep. He's the CEO of IndoCount. I was at dinner with him in New York City, and we were talking about the brand and the process and the lead time to get products made. I had been at the showroom earlier in the day with his fantastic staff, working on designs and working on what the core program would be and what the historical program was. And while at dinner, he kept talking to me about the brand over and over and over again. And I said to him, honestly, why don't you just buy it? And he said, is it for sale? And I said, everything's for sale. I'm a capitalist. And while I would love to start up the brand, I have a value in my mind where it's not worth me doing it. And I have a value in my mind that I'm willing to part with it. I'm not willing to negotiate. It's one number and that's it.
Okay.
And you have 48 hours to tell me if you want to do it or not. Now that you've taken this out of the bag, it's going to make doing business with you hard, because if we don't come to a deal, it's going to make the relationship weird. So be sure that you want to do this, because I don't know what'll happen from here. 48 hours later, we reached an agreement, and we sold on a handshake, and the brand got sold over a handshake for $10 million. Now, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, and I know that people are unhappy with me and the stock price. But when you buy Bed Bath & Beyond for $22 million, and you could sell one little trademark of a brand that hadn't been on the shelf for 3 years for 10, well, it's a pretty good idea, I think. So I sat down with the team and I said, I have a chance to sell this for 10 million. It wasn't because we needed cash. It's because I felt like that $10 million could be used more intelligently doing something else than just starting up a brand. I always knew that Bed Bath could still be a distributor of the product, and it didn't need to own the IP to pick up the incremental vertical margin, because I wasn't going to make the product myself anyway. I was going to have an idea. There was going to be a manufacturer. The manufacturer was going to distribute to me, and I was going to sell it to the customer. So I wasn't even in capturing the vertical margin anyway. So when I did the calculus on it, it would take me 40 years to make up the delta of what I would make if I owned it and manufactured it. That was $10 million, because I would always have the right to sell it. So that's how Wamesetta got sold. And I would do it again. And by the way, I think it's one of the greatest trades to ever happen in the home space.
All right. Next, hired a CEO to run the Bed Bath & Beyond business, and then got rid of that CEO.
Yep. I hired Chandra Holt, a nice lady, came with a decent resume, a lot of retail experience,
Yep.
Target, Bed Bath. She had been at cons for a very short period of time, and that didn't last very long. I will tell you that we signed a non-disparagement agreement when she left. So I'll be very careful, because my lawyers are watching of what I say. But I work 7 days a week, and I work 12 hours a day minimum. And when you're trying to revive a company and we're trying to build something and you have a company that's losing money, I expect everybody in the company to work their ass off.
Okay.
Every day, all the time. And when people don't feel as immersed in the opportunity, but are getting a big wage, and her employment agreement is available for public consumption, that's a lot of money for a company that's losing money to pay somebody who doesn't want to put in the kind of time that I'm putting in working for free. And my tolerance for that level of engagement is low.
Okay.
I wish her well. She's a smart woman, but it just wasn't the right fit. And you'll find with me that when things don't work, I don't wait a long time.
Well, hence this list, right? Um, Company announced it would add 440 million in sales in 2024. That was, I think, at the close of the fourth quarter during the fourth quarter investor call, and then a few weeks later announced walking that back.
So the company didn't say it. Marcus said it. I said it.
Okay.
Yeah. I was on my first call, and I had just gotten there, and I knew in my mind that I wanted to get Overstock ramped up again. I knew that the company couldn't just function with Bed Bath & Beyond. Overstock was too much of a darling brand. And I had not, and people have said to me, you should have done your diligence before you said it. And you should have, everybody's right that I should have spent 6 months trying to figure out before saying that. I did the same thing that everybody else did. I looked at Bed Bath. I looked at the revenue that it was doing. I looked at the historical revenue that Overstock was doing. I did the calculus on the categories that Bed Bath wasn't penetrating and the categories that Overstock historically penetrated very well. Rugs, patio furniture, large furniture. And I did the calculus, and the delta between those two was about $800 million that I did not believe Bed Bath could pick up the incremental business. I didn't believe it could do that, at least profitably. So I've made the assumption that if I got Overstock stood up, while it wouldn't be $1.5 billion again, it could get in the $500, $600 million range right out of the rip. But I didn't understand how destroyed the domain authority and the technology stack at Bed Bath was, because it was literally crumbling every single day the further it got away from the August 1st switch. So as time went on, from August 1st, when Overstock closed and Bed Bath came on, every day that went by, the domain authority, the backlinks, the natural search, everything got worse and worse and worse and worse because the architecture, the schematic of the site had been totally destroyed. I didn't know that. The reason that I came back, I think it was 3.5 weeks later or 4 weeks later.
Yeah, it was very long after that. Yeah.
And cleaned it up is because I'm a bit of a believer in being a truth teller. And what I discovered in those 4 weeks was that that wasn't going to be possible. And so I took the punch to the face, as I deserved. Nobody should have taken that responsibility other than me. But we're now into March. So really quickly in March, we acknowledged that this isn't going to happen and got terribly punished. I deserve that. Hard stop.
Well, I believe one of the things you said at the time also was that you were not going to dump a lot of money into simply growing the top line at the expense of the bottom line. I think that was another point you were underscoring at that moment.
Yeah, and I still feel that same way today. I don't believe in chasing negative contribution margin unless your thesis to chase negative contribution margin has a lifetime value payoff that I can see somewhere else. As an example, if I have transaction 1 that I lose $1 on, but I have a good customer experience, I should be able to do transaction 2 with that same customer, and my cost of acquisition should go away. So every other time that transaction remains sticky, my lifetime value of that consumer should get better. Well, what was missing at the company is no true CRM, no database that actually cataloged a consumer's behavior, their buying history, their buying preferences, and any predictive technology that would tell you what they are going to buy next. Didn't exist. So until you have the catch fence to take on negative transactions and put them into a journey process that allows you to engage with them for transaction 2, 3, 4, 5, and down the road to recapture your original investment of loss, why would you continue to sell things and lose money? It doesn't make any sense.
Is that infrastructure now in place, or is that still coming together?
So I went out. I have a relationship with the founder of Salesforce, Mark Benioff. It's a longtime friend of mine. Called him up and said, Mark, I'm in trouble. The company that I took over, I would have assumed had a CRM. It doesn't have a CRM. It has a spreadsheet. It doesn't have a journey process. It has no AI, no predictive technology to tell you what people buy. It has no loyalty program of any significance of any kind. And I need to build that. We negotiated for a couple of weeks. We got an unbelievably attractive deal. The implementation is about 8 months. That process is implementing almost completely done as we sit here today. And for disclosure, it's New Year's Eve.
Okay. On New Year's Eve.
Yeah. So it's essentially done. And you'll see that there'll be a payoff for that. But until that was in place, I wasn't going to continue to just pour money at it and pour money at it and pour money at it. I just wasn't going to do it. So you saw the revenue start to drop.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I think the final thing in this list, and this one we might get a little sticky. You mentioned the lawyers because this is coming announced, bringing Bed Bath & Beyond back to bricks and mortar via investments in Kirkland's home and the Container Store. And then announced not that long after that Container Store might not go forward. And we should also note that soon after that happened, Container Store entered Chapter 11.
Yep. So I have a very strong belief that to build a proper customer file and to build true profitability, a company needs to be very strong digitally, but also needs an omni-channel experience. And that the cost of acquiring customers and the cost of retaining customers on a singular e-commerce platform, while it can be done, is daunting from a financial standpoint. If anybody ever really understood the profitability of Amazon, they would know that Amazon's profitability is built by their computer storage business and their data storage business, not by their transactions of bubblegum and paper towels. That is, they don't make much money there. If you study Wayfair's financials, that leadership team has done an amazing job building a multi-billion dollar business. I mean, billions of revenue. It's not as profitable as people would expect. And there's a significant amount of debt. And so that company made a very firm bet, and I am a fan of that company, of leveraging the future through the form of debt to fuel the growth of the top line with the expectation that at some point that top line would convert to gross margin, that gross margin would convert to lower SG&A, lower acquisition costs, and the EBITDA would start pouring in at some point. I'm a fan of that business. I think that the debt structure at that company is, I'm sure, not something that anybody there is comfortable with. It's billions of dollars, and Beyond is a debt-free company. So you can make a choice in that moment to chase what Wayfair was doing. But Bed Bath & Beyond is not a big enough brand in wide enough categories to compete with Wayfair, because Bed Bath & Beyond has a historical tribal knowledge of every household in America of kitchen, bed, bath, and some other things. I don't think about them for much else. And the cost to change my mind and the cost to communicate to me and the cost to execute it would be in the billions.
Okay.
I don't want to spend the money.
Yeah. The Kirkland's Association is still pending, right? It's, I think, still awaiting shareholder approval on their end. But from listening to their most recent investor calls, it sounds like they're already like in the works, at least preparing for what's to come. And you have outlined previously some of how this is going to work. I believe the Kirkland's team is in charge of the merchandising, right? Sourcing, etc., just in charge of which of some of their stores will convert as an unknown number at this point. I think
let's take a step back and because I didn't address the Container Store piece.
Okay.
So I looked at a number of companies as potential investments and or acquisitions for Beyond to either be quasi omni-channel or be omni-channel.
Yeah.
And what I didn't want to do is take on a lot of water, take on a lot of debt. I'm not scared of properly structured leases. I'm not scared of owning inventory, but I am scared of senior secured debt and bond debt. That scares the hell out of me because you're in a variable rate environment and ultimately those lenders own your business until you pay them off. And when I looked at Container Store, and I still, just for full disclosure, I'm in discussions. Even though they're in bankruptcy today, I am still in discussions with their lenders as we sit here right now.
Okay. Because you had said, I believe the company in its statement about this maybe being on the rocks or maybe not going through.
That deal and that structure, that isn't going to happen.
That isn't going to happen. Okay. So that's all right.
But is there still something that potentially could happen? Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
I met with all the lenders. They're very smart people. They believe in the process that I want to put in place. They understand that business better than people think. And we'll see where that process goes here over the next 30 to 60 days. I'm sure the public disclosures will update everybody. But the transaction that was presented to the marketplace, I don't believe the lenders are ever going to be able to put something in front of me that I'm ever going to agree to, which is why I had that caveat in the deal from the beginning to protect them, to protect us, to protect everybody.
Okay.
The Kirkland's transaction, I'm actually equally, if not more excited about.
Can we just explain for people real quickly? It's not Beyond Inc. acquiring Kirkland's. That is not the way this is structured. It's Beyond Inc. making an investment. Am I characterizing that correctly?
The transaction
it's not an acquisition.
The transaction that is on the table today, in front of the shareholders, and there was already a shareholder vote on December 23rd, and they were not able to reach a quorum.
Oh, okay. I missed.
They had a very high percentage of yes, like 90+% of yes, but they were not able to reach a quorum, and that vote has been delayed.
Okay.
So the transaction that has been proposed is we would invest $17 million into their company in the form of debt. That happened already. That happened in, I believe it was November or end of October. I can't recall the exact closing date. We took out Gordon Brothers, who is a liquidator, a fine liquidator, but they were providing some, relatively expensive financing for the company. It's never a good sign when you have Gordon Brothers or Hilco in your financing stack. Never a good idea. So we took out Gordon Brothers, and then once we received shareholder approval, we would invest $8 million additionally for a total of 25, and we would have the right to convert a portion of our 25 million at $1.85 a share, not to exceed 40% of the ownership of the company.
Okay.
By the way, 40% is essentially ownership. It's control.
Yeah.
But we structured it in a way that gave that board a lot of comfort that they still were calling the shots. We would add 2 independent directors to it. We would not be able to make any active moves that would take us over 50%. We agreed to a standstill. And I did that because I wanted everybody to be happy and I wanted this to work. And we identified what I consider is a unbelievably spectacular management team. Unbelievably. That was largely what I was attracted to. There was 3 things that I was attracted to with Kirkland's. Number 1, I believed in their management team and what they were doing to turn things around from a company that's been out there for 50 years, doing wonderful work in the home decor space. And yes, they've had their challenges, but they made a fatal mistake during COVID of distributing out to their shareholders all of their cash.
Oh.
Public filings, I'm not telling you something that's and it put the company in peril. Because when COVID ended, like it did for all of us, things came crashing down and there was no soft landing.
Yep.
what I love about Amy Sullivan, who's the CEO there, is that she's a merchant. And when I'm with her, all we talk about is product innovation, fabrication, sourcing, margin, what the customer wants, not making cheap stuff, building up new ideas. She's so in love with product that she has some work to do because she's a new CEO to the world, but she has some work to do to learn the other sucky parts of being a CEO, like dealing with the board or dealing with public shareholders or dealing with all the crazy stuff. But I will tell you that in the few months that I've been dealing with her, she has been spectacular in her learning curve. Spectacular.
Okay. And she and her team will be involved in the merchandising decisions for the brick and mortar brand.
We licensed to that company the rights to Bed Bath & Beyond format stores less than 15,000 square feet. And we are ultimately giving them the rule of law on what the merchant strategy assortment is, both online and in store,
Online at bedbathandbeyond.com.
And on core product, on core assortment. What the current Overstock / Beyond team would supplement would be anything in excess of the core categories for the endless aisle on the website. For example, nobody at Kirkland's, in my opinion, or nobody at Bed Bath historical, in my opinion, was proficient in patio, rug, furniture, case goods, things of that nature. And Overstock possesses excellent buyers on those categories. So it would be a complementary effort where the omni-channel experience for the consumer would be clear in the core offerings of bed, bath, kitchen, small accessory furniture, and they would control the assortment and the vendor allocation in both store and online. And then the Overstock team would supplement the endless aisle just on the extended categories.
At the bedbathandbeyond.com platform.
Yeah.
So when does that transition start at the bedbathandbeyond.com platform?
It has started already, and we're already in vendor consolidation, and we're already in SKU curation. And we've taken off about 360,000 SKUs a week in the last 8 weeks.
Okay.
And there's two primary reasons why we're doing that. One, any vendor who delivers us negative contribution margin is being parked for a minute.
Okay.
And any categories that aren't core to Bed Bath and aren't delivering positive contribution margin are being removed from the site. If they're being removed, and we believe they're still good categories, they're being moved back over to the revived Overstock. So you're taking and putting Overstock back together like Humpty Dumpty on a wall. But you can't. I've had a lot of analysts say to me, why don't you just move the 10 million SKUs tomorrow morning? It's like, well, I would rather not destroy the business again. So in the process to do that, Jennifer, what vendors have been frustrated with me about, and I understand it, is revenue continues to do this. And the reason revenue continues to do this is because I made a decision on October 24th that I would not allow any negative contribution margin transactions to happen on the website at all anymore going forward, period, end of story. In some cases, those negative contribution margins are a function of us not being efficient with our marketing spend. In other cases, it could be a function of the vendor not providing a reasonable first cost. In some versions, it's a product that just makes no sense and we're not making any money on it, and it's just clogging up the marketplace. What you will see is a walk down in revenue and a walk up in margin and a walk up in conversion and a walk up in profitability to get to a base, a newfound floor.
Okay.
And once I find that floor, I will do what everybody wanted me to do from the beginning, which is drive growth and drive the business. But it's very hard to drive growth when you're dealing with products and SKUs and some vendors, not all, who are exploiting the open marketplace, because remember, they control a lot in that open marketplace, and driving profitability down.
But that's what I'm trying. So it sounds like you're curating online, or that the team, Amy Sullivan's team, is curating online at Bed Bath & Beyond, the core of what Bed Bath & Beyond stands for. Is that?
And then underneath that, the current Beyond merchandising team is curating the endless aisle even more, because Amy's SKUs are just a subset of Beyond's overall revenue. If I looked at all the revenue that Beyond generates for a year, and I'll use, a trailing 12 months as an example of 1.5, the amount of sheets and small appliances and bath accessories and bath towels and pillows and things that are in a traditional bed bath is only a fraction of the total revenue. The bulk of the revenue that the company still generates are the legacy overstock SKUs of patio furniture and rugs.
Okay.
So we're moving that back over. Overstock was historically on April 1st was at zero, and now it's doing $450,000 to $500,000 a day. That's okay. Is it great? No. But is it slowly building up? Yes. Is the margin good? Yes. Is the conversion right? Yes. Is it having positive contribution? Yes. And when we show the market what's happening with the numbers, they're going to see an October P&L, a November P&L, and a December P&L. And they're going to see not good and then sequentially better, with December really being what, in my opinion, where things are headed. And hopefully we'll continue to see that in January and in February before our earnings call in February.
Okay. So you're going to present those monthly breakouts during the earnings,
which has never been done before, but I need to be overly illustrative to show people that on October 24th, I told them contribution margin, conversion, and SG&A is all I care about right now. Don't talk to me about anything else. We have wiped out 60 some odd $million since January of SG&A. 60 some odd $1 million. And unfortunately, and my heart breaks for it, most of that came from reducing a staff in half at the old Overstock. It's a much smaller footprint. We sold the building, a 200,000. I don't know if you've ever seen the building. It's a 200,000 square foot mausoleum of just insanity. Cost them $100 million to build it. Gone. So the business is starting to become restructured and reformatted, but the market, the public market, doesn't really care. What they want is results.
Yep. Okay. We've got about 15 minutes left. So I wondered, and we kind of devolved from this point. I got a couple of questions for you, but if you could take maybe just a few minutes to describe what I heard you describe, what I believe is your investor conference in October, about how Beyond Ink becomes this umbrella under which these other businesses sit. And I believe you said that the retail brands each will have their own P&L and will be expected to be profitable within their P&L. You have a number of service agreements in place already, which home loans, product and shipping protection, deal with Angie for local home handyman stuff, home improvement service coming soon. Those don't know if those are flipping revenue yet, but they're going to be revenue contributors, but also data information, right? Aren't you part of this whole model is consuming?
It is the model. And so on my first call, I very subtly talked about one general concept, which is the four corners of your property and the four walls of your house. And to me, that's the TAM. That's the available marketplace for our company to play in. And I want to really understand from a technology standpoint how I can affect that. I'll make it as simple as I possibly can. While all of that fun stuff, i.e., circus, is happening on the retail transformation side with the websites and people coming and going and merchandising moving this way and the deal with Kirkland's, while that whole retail transformation is happening, there still is a significant investment in the Medici blockchain assets. And whether it's T0 or Grain Chain or a variety of other things, a lot of people are in the stock because of that. And it's taken me a little bit of time to get up to speed on where those companies are and what they're doing. And 2 years ago, there was what I would call a awkward transaction done in Salt Lake City between Overstock, the company, and a private equity firm, management firm in Salt Lake City, where they gave the rights to manage that portfolio to a third party, paid them $2.5 million a year, and gave them 30% of the upside.
Ooh.
It's an awkward transaction. I've been publicly very much against that transaction. It doesn't feel like it was done in a way that maybe I would have or anybody else would have wanted to do it. The company has lost its ability to manage that portfolio, and it pays a fee for somebody else to manage that portfolio. And that portfolio has lost value in a significant way. I have made the decision that I am going to change the strategy there. And we are going to bring back what we know is most important to a subset of the investors, which is we are going to be a technology business, a fintech business, and we are going to embrace the legacy investments that are there. Company still does have a direct investment in a couple of those companies, so it's able to manage it. But I would expect that in short order, you will see a digital transformation and an innovation type transformation happen at Beyond, where it re-engages in blockchain and it re-engages in crypto, not through that portfolio, but through another transaction.
Hmm.
And that it takes blockchain technology. And I want to be really slow about this. For people that don't know what it is, you should think about it like a vault or a safe in your house where you can open the code and you can put stuff in there. But once it's in there, it cannot be manipulated, cannot be altered at any point. And what I'm working on building is a vault built on blockchain in a wallet where a homeowner can put their home and all of their relevant information, their appraisal, their purchase agreements, their title, their survey, their floor plans, their design ideas, their maintenance ideas, their warranties, their insurance, all into that wallet, all into that vault. And that ultimately is the four walls and the four corners. If you look at the logo that's got the corners and the walls, it also looks like a vault. It looks like a safe with a dial on it. It's not by accident that I did that. I just needed time to figure out how to piece it all together because I couldn't get the Pelion assets back. And I knew that I had tens of millions of consumer transactions, which means that I had access to people. I had their address. I had all the information. Now I have to figure out how to give them a way to control their own assets in a different model. It's far more complicated than this call. But what I see happening ultimately is this fintech, blockchain, crypto, traditional financing, warranty, insurance business sits here.
Okay.
And all of the other brands, whether it's the investment in Kirkland's, the ownership of Bed Bath, Overstock, whatever it is, are nothing more than lead generators. Call it a funnel for everything up here. But it's going to reposition itself back to being far more of a technology-driven business that loves commerce, but it loves commerce because it loves money and it loves to make money, but it loves consumer data and it wants to differentiate itself from what other people are doing.
All right. That's quite a journey.
Yeah.
Do we have a time frame on that? I mean, I know you like to run fast and you want things to happen tomorrow.
So
That's all you need to change.
here are the things that have already happened that people don't have to brace themselves for. The company is marching towards cash flow positive. We'll start with that. 2, I don't believe, it's my belief. This is not a SEC statement. I don't believe the company ever runs out of money. I know that there's people that like to throw stones at that. I have different knowledge. I myself have bought stock in the company directly from the company. I will continue to do that.
And you don't get paid. You still haven't been paid, correct? I know there's a benchmark that you have to hit before you get paid at this company.
The stock has to be $45, $55, and $65.
Okay.
Yeah. By the way, when I got there, it was 11. It went up to 32.
Oh,
It's 5 today.
okay.
So it's been a roller coaster on my watch.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. I got here when it was 11. People were mad as hell. It shot up to 30 something. People were happy as hell. It shot down to 5. I'm public enemy number 1. I accept that. And I understand that the proof's going to be in the pudding.
Yeah. Okay.
But what has happened is the SG&A has been reduced like we told people it would. The building has sold like we told people it would. Overstock has relaunched like we told people it would. Overstock is now generating revenue like we told people it would. Bed Bath curation is happening like we told people it would. The margins are improving sequentially like we told people it would. The losses are getting better like we told people that it would. The deal with Kirkland's got done like we told people that it would. The deal with Container Store got done. We elected not to pursue it because it wasn't a good transaction for us. And so there is a lot happening, but a lot has already happened.
Well,
a lot has already happened.
I believe my piece about Beyond Ink started with you could fill a whole page with everything that's happened at Beyond in 2024. We've only got a couple of minutes, so I've got to pull the lens back in a broader view. My final question for you is, what do you see ahead for 2025? Not just for the Beyond Ink business, but for the broader business environment. We have a lot of things happening, obviously, new administration coming in. But what challenges and opportunities do you think leaders are going to have to navigate in 2025?
Well, just based on my involvement in ownership in other businesses, I'm here to tell you that I hope that people aren't preparing for 25 to be some boom and banner year. While I think that the consumer is less fragile than they were 6 months ago, they are not wealthier than they were 6 months ago. And while the interest rates in a lot of cases have dropped in the last 3 or 4 months, it takes time for the gap of that drop in rate to affect people's savings, to affect people's monthly cash flow. I think the products that our industry sells across the board are going to continue to be under pressure of the consumer's discretionary wallet. And they are going to continue to expect more value for less money. And when you have other companies using technology and using certain marketplaces to come up with dupes and knockoffs and whatever you want to call it, non-branded products, consumers are now being trained to accept that the brand isn't as important as the price. That bothers me. It bothers me a lot. I strongly believe in brands. And I strongly believe that a brand can only survive if its brand promise is different from somebody else's. And brand promises are around innovation. They're around product development. They're around understanding and controlling the BOM of the cost that it takes to make that product, the cost of the supply chain to get that product from point A to point B to point C to point D, and taking out some of those points to lessen the cost, to be able to deliver that consumer something different and special. I think open marketplaces are going to continue to become a bloodbath. And I think ultimately omni-channel, very strong e-commerce business with very solid, properly risked retail businesses connected through tissue of of information so that customers know how to transact and they know where their information is all that will survive. If I was a vendor in 2025, I would rationalize my SKUs. I would rationalize my staff. I would invest heavily in categories where you know the bulk of your business comes from. I would continue to develop some products, but I would be careful not to allow your portfolio to go where you can't even see it anymore. And maybe even start to curate a little bit more, not just because the consumer, because the cost of capital isn't any less expensive. The cost of inventory isn't any less expensive. The cost of supply chain isn't any less expensive. And the cost or possibility of tariffs
is real. Is real.
Yep.
Is very real.
All right. So batten down the hatches, focus on your core, Find your core, strengthen your core.
I think it's pick your dance partners, tighten up your assortment, be careful not to take too much cash out of your business, and make capital allocation your number one priority for 2025. Because if the market doesn't respond as well as people are hoping to what a new administration may bring, and you could use the 10-year treasury as your indicator, 10-year treasury isn't good. It's 4.52 this morning. It is not good. And the consumer will not bounce back until that 10-year treasury is below 4.2. And you don't need me to tell you that. You can go back and build a 40-year graph of the 10-year treasury, and you can see GDP and debt and the direct correlation to the 10-year treasury. And right now, the 10-year treasury is telling you that the consumer doesn't, just because the election's over, doesn't mean that the consumer has more money.
Okay. So it's going to be another year for smart thinking and focus.
And digital transformation.
Okay. Marcus, thank you very much. I've learned some things, and I as much of a smarty pants as I am, I feel like I pay pretty close attention to your company and I know what's going on. But thank you, and look forward to seeing what the fourth quarter report brings.
We'll do this 1 year from today.
Okay, that sounds...
It's a date.
All right, it's a date. Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye.